Hello and welcome back. I'm Professor Riley, and the topic for this particular video is going to be life. Okay, that's kind of a very broad topic, but this is an introductory biology class, and really what we're getting down to with biology. Biology is the study of life and living organisms, all right? And being that we are scientists, scientists like to have order to what they study. So as part of that, there are going to be 7 characteristics that have to be associated with an organism in order for that particular organism to be classified as alive, okay? Now there are going to be some things that are going to be needed for life, things like water. Okay, life here on Earth is dependent on water, but that doesn't define life. Water itself is a chemical molecule, and in terms of that, it's necessary for life, but it's in terms of defining what defines life, okay? We've got 7 things that need to be met, 7 criteria. First of all, you have to have some kind of order, all right? The particular organism has to be organized in a particular way. For example, you've got petals coming off of a sunflower, all right? Or if we're going to talk about the human body, you've got the organs organized so they're internal rather than external. Because if you had your heart on the outside of your skin, that would expose your heart to the environment. It would make it much more vulnerable, much less likely that you would survive. Okay? So you have to have some kind of order to the particular organism that you're looking at. You have to have that particular organism has to have the ability to reproduce. It has to have offspring, okay? So reproduction is going to be another characteristic to classify something as alive. The other thing that we're going to need to have is going to be growth or development. Okay, so in terms of that, that particular organism has to be able to grow, to develop, all right, to go from, say, the infant to the adult stage would be an example of development. Growth, physically getting bigger. That particular organism has to have a way to process energy, okay? So it has to have some sort of metabolism in order to be classified as alive, okay? So it's got to be able to process energy, all right? It also has to be able to interact with the environment. Oops. There we go. So for example, our sunflower that has the petals organized around the outside of it, flowers have the ability to reproduce. They grow, they go from a seed to a mature flower. They have a metabolism, they undergo cellular respiration. Sunflowers, if you've ever watched them, will follow the sun. That's them interacting with the environment, okay? So in terms of that, in order to be classified as alive, that particular organism has to interact with the environment. It has to have some mode of regulation, all right? Typically that regulation, what we're talking about, this is also linked to metabolism. So in terms of that, with animals that live in the desert, one of the ways they regulate body heat is by having features that, say, have a lot of surface area, all right? Typically animals in the desert have bigger ears. The ears give off, that's more surface area, allows more heat to be released. allows the organism to cool its body temperature. So it has to have a way to regulate itself, okay? And then the last one is the ability to undergo evolutionary adaptation. And we haven't really talked about evolution yet, okay? But evolution essentially is changes that happen over time. So in terms of evolution and adapting, an organism has to be able to adapt to its environment, all right? Whether that be a plant suddenly having drier conditions to deal with or wetter conditions to deal with, that would be an example of them adapting to a particular environmental process, okay? So that would really be kind of more regulation, but that regulation in the long term, if we're talking about the area where that particular plant is over the long term, stays drier. That plant has to be able to adapt to the lower water levels. That's where evolution comes in, okay? When we're talking about that, we're talking really about, with evolutionary adaptation, we're talking about an interplay between the genes and the environment for that particular organism, okay? So in terms of life, these 7 processes need to be present in order for something to be considered alive, all right? I'll go ahead and give you the punchline here. Our smallest unit of life that has all of these characteristics that we are going to talk about this semester is the cell, okay? So the cell is going to be the smallest unit of life that we will discuss this semester. We are going to talk about smaller structures. We're going to talk about the chemistry and the parts that make up the cell. But know that the chemistry, the parts that make up the cell, the molecules, those are not alive, even though they are a component of the cell, okay? It is the unit that we're talking about in terms of living. So a cell is going to be our smallest unit of life, okay? And in terms of that, that's going to be our main focus for this semester, okay? If you have any questions about any of these, please let me know. Otherwise, thank you for your attention.